Jersey boys, who is a Belleville graduate, passed away last week. I'd also like to suggest to the committee that runs the Wall of Recognition that we do something to get him on the Wall of Recognition and honor him. Just take a moment of silence.
He wants to put him on the wall of fame. Whoever died from the Jersey boys.
Yeah, it's next on the agenda.
Come up there with the rest of the criminals.
And now we're going to have the oath of office of Daniel Grosso.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Mr. Grosso. As the board secretary, it's my pleasure to have you take this oath of office with the Belleville Board of Education. If you can repeat after me, I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I support the Constitution of the United States.
Do solemnly swear that I support the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of New Jersey.
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
And that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God.
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people, so help me God.
We have another section here. I, state your name,
I, Daniel Grosso,
do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of the Board of Education,
do solemnly swear that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of the Board of Education,
and I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 1941,
and I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 9-4-1,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
I am very honored to serve the educational community of Belleville, even for a short period of time. I started a career at the high school, and I quickly realized that I was part of an excellent school system staffed by many qualified and dedicated staff members and administration. Anything that I can offer, from my perspective, I'd be glad to do so, because my perspective is to provide the best educational environment for these students, and at the same time be mindful and sensitive to the taxpayers of Belleville. Thank you.
Calling the meeting to order. This meeting has been posted and announced in accordance with Chapter 231B of 1975. Mr. Jacobus, please call the roll.
Mr. Grasso.
Here.
Mr. Kubler.
Here.
Mrs. Torres. Here. Mr. Zangari is excused. Mr. Frieda.
Here.
Mrs. Lombardi.
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Here. Is there any discussion for the public business meeting minutes for July 14th, 2014 and August 11th, 2014? Hearing none. We have no SGO rep tonight. Items to be presented by administration. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Rick Acosta. Many of you may know him as the principal of number 4. Mr. Acosta is now the acting superintendent of schools.
Thank you very much. I am under the understanding that there hasn't been a superintendent's report in a while, so this will be a bit lengthy, not much, I promise. But I do have a lot of things to share with everyone. First of all, I want to apologize. I'm truly sorry with all of the technical difficulties that have arisen in this first couple of weeks of school. It's been difficult for parents, students, teachers, administrators, so I wanted to start off by apologizing for that, but we are working extremely hard to get everything back up and running. I also want to say what a successful opening day we had here with all of our teachers and staff present. I want to give a particular thanks to Mike Mignon, the president of the BEA, as well as the rest of the executive board, and all of the teachers for all of their support that they've shown me, beginning with that very first day. I think it went well. I think that the message was received, and I think that we're moving in the right direction. I also I want to thank my staff at school number 4, because I have been here most of the time and they have done an excellent job, just holding down the fort while I get things settled here. In particular, one of my teachers is here, Ms. Rosanna Brugo, who's been outstanding in this time of my absence. So thank you very much. I have a lot of thanks to give to a lot of people. So next for me is just the opportunity that I've been given to work with such a great team. And I need to thank Ms. Diana Kelleher, who has been outstanding. She is the smartest, kindest, most hardworking person I've ever worked with, and I am privileged and honored to have her helping me, helping to move this district forward. And of course, with Power School down, Mr. Russ Pagano and his staff at the high school deserves a lot of credit for their hard work. Ms. Dora Cavallo and her staff at the middle school, Ms. Barbara Carenti and the counselors for all of their work, as well as Mr. Ray Jacobus and the board office staff, payroll and human resources. They've helped keep the district afloat in this time where we've been challenged with these difficulties with our IT system. I have a couple of things. There's a 7% savings for the district on our dental coverage, which did not change the coverage at all. We just received a 7% discount, however, so that's a savings for the district that we found out about earlier this week. Also, our workers' compensation, New Jersey School Board's Insurance Group Consortium did an analysis, and as per their recommendation, they are taking care of the workers' comp for the district, which is going to be a savings in excess of $200,000 for the district. I'm also pleased to announce that board meetings will be televised beginning with the October board meeting. That will be taken care of by the high school mass communication, Mr. Ryan Sheridan and some of the students, high school students. We also have, there was a request to have the Franklin Street stop for the middle school changed, so that was done earlier this week. From my understanding, it's gone over well. I know there have been a lot of questions about CUSAC and the CUSAC report. At the October 20th meeting, the report will be presented and reviewed for the public. Earlier today, in closed session, the board met with the superintendent search firm. to establish the guidelines, and there will be more information coming forward. They will be speaking to members of the community as well as teachers, secretaries, custodial maintenance, so a representative of the entire district as well as the residents. And the last thing that I want to say is that we will be posting for the business administrator position. Mr. Jacobus is only an interim, so we will be posting for a permanent business administrator. Thank you.
Mr. Costa, Essex County, please.
Let's not be too confused.
We have the Essex County Youth Symposium on October 22nd. And there's also two students that are going to be recognized. The Rensselaer medalist, Pasquale Giancarelli, and the Bauschwab Honorary Science Award to Jennifer Vasquez. I'm sorry, Mr. Lipo will be making the presentations.
Yeah, there you go. Why is he presenting?
Good evening, Mr. Rivera, Board President, Mr. Acosta, Acting Superintendent, and Board Trustees. It's my pleasure to announce the top junior science scholarship winners for the 2013-2014 school year. This is the third consecutive year that the Science Department has done this. The Bosch and Lom Honorary Science Award is a scholarship to the University of Rochester for $7,500 per year for 4 years, totaling $30,000. I'm pleased to announce that our recipient this year is Jennifer Vasquez. The Rensselaer Medal is a scholarship to the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute for a minimum of $15,000 a year for 4 years, totaling $60,000. I am pleased to announce that our recipient this year is P.J. Giancarelli.
Way to go, PJ!
Items to be presented by board members. Mr. Grasso?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Grasso. Ms. Torres?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper?
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to say congratulations to the two recipients for the outstanding achievement, and keep up the good work, and keep Belleville proud. Second thing I'd like to say is thank you to everyone here for being patient with us. We had some matters to attend to in the private session. It's greatly appreciated. Lastly, I would like to congratulate Mr. Costa and School 4 for a great success for the back to school night last Thursday. Had a great turnout and very positive atmosphere, which you like. In fact, they had a motto basically at School 4 is where we roar, and they implemented other things such as roar dollars to try to basically promote the students to do positive things within not only school but within the district as a whole, which I think is a great thing. And not only that, walking through the school brought back a lot of memories as a former graduate of School 4, seeing obviously the rooms were hot, but how dedicated and proud the teachers were there. And it definitely brought warmth to me knowing that. And I spoke to a lot of teachers. There are a few things we'll follow up. I'll follow up to Mr. Jacobus and everybody. But it was great, and I appreciate for asking me to come and the warm welcome I received as well. And all the parents were delighted for how dedicated, because you actually saw it when I walked by, went through the tours, saw the teachers communicating with the parents, and us as board members, we don't, there's, obviously we hear a lot of things, but we're very proud to hear that, and please keep up the good work, and again, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Acosta, his staff, administration, and everything. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Mrs. Lombardi?
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. I would just like to thank our faculty, staff, and everyone for being, especially parents, students, patient with our system and our situation at the start of school. I know you all worked hard. I know our first 2 days were productive, even though there were no schedules. Really, really appreciate all your hard work and effort. We have a grant committee meeting scheduled for September 22nd. To get back on track with that, I want to welcome Mr. Grasso to our team. We look very forward to working with you. Also want to congratulate our 2 scholarship recipients. Nice work. And that is all I have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lombardi. I'll echo Jeannie's remarks. Congratulations, Mr. Grasso. Welcome to the board. Mr. Frieda, I'm so sorry. Mr. Frieda.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of quick things. First of all, I want to wish the congratulations to Squall and Jennifer. We're delighted for this, and we are very proud of you, so congratulations again. I would like to also welcome Mr. Grasso. We appreciate you being here, and I'm looking forward to working with you. I would also like to echo what Mrs. Lombardi said about thanking the faculty. This was an extremely unusual and difficult school opening, and I appreciate the effort by all of the staff to try to make the school opening as as painless as possible. We do appreciate that. Finally, the technology committee met earlier at about 4:30 this afternoon, and it was a lengthy meeting. We have not gotten to the real root cause of actually what transpired, so I don't really have a report to give you, other than the fact is that it's being looked at and investigated as to what the problems were. That's it, Mr. President. Thank you.
Where's the backup?
Again, I apologize, Mr. Frieda. Thank you very much.
Where was the backup?
Mr. Grasso, as I stated earlier, welcome to our award recipients. Congratulations. I'm sure your parents are going to be very happy and very proud of you. And that'll be all my remarks for this evening. I have a motion to open for public comment. So moved. Any discussion? Remarks regarding agenda items and issues that are relevant to the educational system. Participant must sign in and be recognized by the presiding officer and must preface comments by an announcement of his or her name, place of residence, and group affiliation if appropriate. The individual called shall proceed with a maximum of 5 minutes. All statements shall be directed to the President of the Board of Education. No participant may address board members individually. Joseph Delaferro, please come to the podium. State your name, address, and group affiliation if appropriate.
My name is Joseph A. Delaferro. I reside at 44 Celia Terrace. I'm an unemployed Belleville school teacher because of reduction in force, supposedly. Last year I taught at the Belleville Middle School as an inclusion teacher, and I was not rehired. However, on July 9th, I sent Mr. Regan this email explaining who I am, and I don't want to bore you, but being Mr. Regan on the last meeting, August 25th, said the most highly qualified teachers were being hired. I beg to differ. Dear Mr. Regan, please Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Joe Della Ferra, and I believe my background would be important to you. I was employed as an inclusion teacher in the Belleville Middle School this year, and I would love to be hired back to work there again. Last year, I was a first grade teacher at school number 4. Prior to the last 2 years, I was a student teacher in the 4th grade for 4 months at school number 3. Since September 2003, I was a substitute teacher in all 7 of the elementary schools here in my hometown. And I worked almost every day filling in for just about every elementary school teacher in our district. During the 10-week recreation basketball season, I was also employed by the Belleville Recreation Department as a security person at the middle school for the past 5 years. I live in Belleville, and I want to be a positive role model here for our children in the middle school or in any of our elementary schools. I am patient and flexible. I always try to make learning fun. If you'd like to see my enthusiasm, I was on 2 commercials and I was on Wheel of Fortune. I've sent emails, 4 emails, August 20th, August 24th, August 25th I was here. None of my questions were answered by Mr. Egan or Mr. Jacobus. I sent emails on August 26th, August 27th, nothing. Last week, I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday, I received a call from Donna Denti from the administration office. If Mr. if Mr. Egan doesn't call you this morning, he will call you on Friday. I haven't received any communication from Mr. Egan whatsoever. That's the truth. Now, I told you I was an inclusion teacher. I don't have a job anymore. From what I understand, everyone, this is food for thought. I'm not in the school, so I'm disseminating what I hear. I have many friends in this school district, and most of those elementary school teachers requested me to substitute teach for them when they were out, and everybody here knows the truth. And I'm here to speak the truth. We teach our children to work hard and to be honest. However, I feel there's shenanigans and backroom deals occurring here in Belleville now. The 2 of you here, and Rick Acosta sitting up there. If there is a reduction in force, why weren't teachers like me rehired? Why are 2 other, and I told one teacher today who's on the agenda, Jennifer, it's nothing personal. God bless you. You have a job. You should have went to the rehiring list. There's people like Christine Caputo and Allison Yanuzzi who taught in the elementary schools last year. And I believe, and they had effective evaluations. I talked to Christine Caputo. She was out on the field with the cheerleaders. She's good enough to be a cheerleading coach to help the girls succeed, but she's not good enough to be a teacher in the elementary schools here in Belleville. Poppycock. Allison Yanuzzi's she wasn't brought back because of her last name, and I don't have to go any further with that. She had effective evaluation. She should be in a classroom. Just because her last name is Yanuzzi isn't a reason not to bring her back. And I feel I'm guilty by association. Yes, I have friends on Facebook who I don't even speak to, but you see that I'm friends with them. I didn't get a job. Now, as far as the middle schools, it has nothing to do with Mrs. Cavallo. I have a good relationship with her. I taught for her at school 8 and the middle school. Lisa Kistner. I know Lisa a long time.
Joe, you have 30 seconds.
Excuse me?
30 seconds, Joe.
30 seconds? Well, there's inclusion teachers on children's schedules who aren't teaching in the district. Thank you for telling me. Lauren Cooper's retired. Caitlin Boline is not in the district. Courtney Boyle's not in the district and me. What am I doing on a child's schedule as an inclusion teacher? I have a schedule at home. What am I doing on a schedule when I'm not teaching? First of all, you're not abiding by state law. Those children who have special learning needs should have a teacher, an inclusion teacher who's qualified like me, and the parents are being deceived.
Thank you, Joe.
That's it. I have a lot more. I'll talk to the Belleville Times. Thank you.
Aisha Hill, please come to the podium, state your name, your address, and your group affiliation if appropriate. Aisha Hill. Joan Lewis, please come to the podium, state your name, address, and group affiliation if appropriate.
Board members, Mr. Jacobus, Mr. Egan, Mr. Acosta. My name is Joan Lewis. I live at 17 Mapes Avenue, Nutley, and I signed the check that pays the taxes for the home at 523 Union Avenue in Belleville. For the past 24 years, I have been a school nurse in Belleville. Fear of retaliation has kept me quiet throughout the past political nonsense happening in the district. But now, that fear is nothing compared to the thoughts of what could go wrong since the decision was made to downsize nursing coverage in the Belleville schools. The medical needs of our students are greater than ever before. We are talking about life-threatening situations, and I do not mean to sound dramatic, but in speaking with more than 40 years' experience as a nurse in this town, beginning at Claremont Hospital, pediatric and emergency departments. I have serious concerns for the health, safety, and welfare of my students. Let's not wait for something tragic to happen before this gets fixed. Please reconsider your choice in nursing staff reduction at a time when even more nurses are needed, not less. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
can I say something in regards to that, please? Ms. Lewis, I just want to say, I have been having conversations with Ms. Carenzi as well as some of the other nurses in the district, and we are well aware of the situation. In conversations with Mr. Jacobus and Mr. Egan, we're waiting for the state loan to come, and once we have those numbers, we're absolutely going to rehire at least one full-time nurse, which is, one more than we have right now. So it's an issue that we are not taking lightly. We're definitely discussing it, and I just wanted for you to know and for everyone else to know that it's something that's been brought to my attention, and we have been discussing it. So we're just waiting for the money to come so we can look at our numbers and make sure that we have the funds to hire, if not two, at least one full-time nurse.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Isis, gracias, Romero. Isis?
Oh, she must have left. She was here. She left. She was sitting
Patricia
there.
Novara, please come to the podium, state your name, address, and group affiliation if appropriate.
It's Patricia Novarado, 98 Sanford Avenue, and no affiliation. I'd like to welcome back our teachers, administration, and other staff. Also, Mr. Grosso, congratulations. Maybe not, I don't be too hesitant on that. It might be regrets because of the condition we're in, but congratulations. The beginning of a new school year usually brings a lot of excitement. And Pasquale and Jennifer, that's very exciting for us to hear in Belleville. But what happened? We heard Mr. Acosta say that, well, kind of got our way there, but you didn't mention, or Mr. Fried, I should say, said we finally got through it. What happened? Do we know what happened? Is it up and running? Is it fixed?
No.
You can ask to the chair. The answer to the question is, we are still working on it, and it's not fixed, and at this point, it is still unclear as to exactly what took place and who's responsible.
So it's a catastrophe, and once again, our kids are paying for it. Well, I came up here before, and since we found out we had a $5 million deficit, the public hasn't heard one word on whose fault it was. I, for one, want to know because my taxes are going to skyrocket. Do we have an explanation for that? What happened? Where did this money magically go? Do we know that? Do we have anyone to blame? Didn't think so. Mr. Egan, you were the change. You were the financial portion of it. But we need real change. Real change. And the real change that makes things better. The change that makes a difference in waking up the voters in this town to do and get what is right for their children. We must start from a clear vision, hoping everyone wants to provide every child the best education. That's still not happening. We say it is, but it's not. We know it's not. Not when the kids have Once again, this board has become an embarrassment to this community. This board continues to spend. It has to stop now. You're destroying this town, and the worst sin of all, you're cheating our children's futures. In school, you're taught a lesson, then you're given a test. In life, you're given a test that teaches you a lesson. So once again, I ask this board, you failed the test as a board trustee. Since your terms are not over, I ask, what have you learned from the failure to not educate our children properly with a $5 million deficit? And a year and a half later, things are getting worse. I'm familiar with the saying, things have to get worse before they get better. Our children can't wait that long. Each day, they are being cheated. I'm not familiar with much technology, Mr. Creed, you know that. But when I can get on Twitter and hear students complaining that the first 2 days of school was such a farce for them, very sad. Why waste people's time? If we're not going to have anything, teachers couldn't even have the copying machines working. Is that true? Very sad. You can all look at me and think that, now she's rambling on, but that's okay. With the start of another school year, you failed once again. In conclusion, I said you're spending and you continue to spend when you should be saving every single penny and being put forth to the children's education. And in case you just want to know a few ideas, and I don't know if anybody's come up with them, the superintendent search, we could have saved that money. The outsourcing of subs cost, the grant writing cost, new positions that are being added, and most of all, the most damaging, is the security guards should be eliminated. Then we would have access to Power School, our children would have supplies, and we would be on our way. 30 seconds, I'm done. I think we should.
Please come to the podium, state your name, address, and group affiliation for the podium.
Patty John, 67 Harrison Street. I just have one question. Everyone's asked, are the schedules up? It's a technology fix. I understand it's not. Can you give us an estimate of when it will be corrected? And you'll have email back and Power School back and everything else. No one's asked that question yet.
Well, they have their schedules. The children do have their schedules.
Everyone has their schedules.
They should have their schedules. I'm not saying everyone does because I can't vouch for that.
Changing every day.
That most of the students already have their schedules.
Changing
as far as getting
every
the system
day.
back up, they are working diligently to repair the damage that was done. And we hopefully will get this back online as soon as possible.
What kind of damage is that?
It's very long and complicated. And at some point, we're actually going to give a report as to what exactly took place and how the system crashed.
Okay.
I don't know exactly how it crashed, but the system crashed.
We have a backup system, right?
We have backups for the system.
Where's the
That
backup?
crashed too?
It's long and complicated how you have to get it back. That's the problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
just one, right here, hi. Really quick, I just want to, I can't emphasize enough, Mr. Pagano and his staff have been working round the clock, during vacation, during the weekend, just to try to get Power School back up and running, same with the middle school. So, in the next couple of weeks, Power School should be up and running where students can access their schedules, online parents will be able to access, and the teachers can input their grades.
I'm well aware of the administration working basically around the clock for the past month, trying to get everything up, including weekends. I'm well aware of it. They should be thanked because they've done a hell of a job just to get these kids schedules.
Absolutely.
But I just want to know when everything's going to be back to normal.
I can't speak about everything else, but I know Power School for a fact, within the next week, week and a half, everything should be back up.
Thank you.
No problem.
Tom McCollum, please come to the podium, state your name, your address, and your affiliation if appropriate.
Tom McCrow, Continental Avenue, Belleville. Will we know tonight why we had an hour for you to have your legal meeting? If not, then why couldn't that meeting have taken place after, so that we didn't have to sit here for an hour waiting to the committee? Not about what we discussed, then it didn't have to happen before the meeting, it could have happened after the meeting.
No, it couldn't. There were two things going on. One was a meeting with various outside individuals trying to get to the bottom of the technology issue. So the board had to meet with those people when they were available to come. And the second issue was, which I think someone already mentioned, was a meeting with the consultants on the superintendent search, which had to take place when they were available. The technology portion of that discussion lasted longer than anyone had anticipated.
Well, okay. On the agenda, item 4, you talk about the minutes for July and August. I assume that means that they will finally be posted on the website.
As soon as it goes.
I have a question about School 4. And again, this is nothing against Mr. Acosta. But since he admitted, or he said, he has spent a lot of time outside of that school, is there somebody in that school has been appointed to act as the leader of that school if something should happen? Is there somebody in charge when you're not there?
Yes, Mrs. Roseanne Lambergo, one of our teachers, she is basically just fields any issues with discipline, and then if there are any issues where discipline needs to be administered, she would contact me.
Okay, and if they had to have a fire drill or whatever, she has the authority to say, yes, the kids are going out.
Fire drill, I would wait until I'm
Well,
in the
again,
building.
let's say something happened and there was an emergency.
If there's an emergency,
Fire
evacuate the
alarm goes
building.
off, she has the authority to
Evacuate the
say,
building.
everybody leaves the building.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Comment was made about televising. Will the problems that we saw when it was televised last year or the year before, will they be corrected? We've proven that with a small handheld video camera, we can see and we can hear what's being said. That wasn't necessarily true when it was being done by the school. Will that have been corrected before October?
We'll have to speak to the mass comms teacher and find out if he's corrected those issues. I don't know at this point.
I talked to him a couple of years ago and he said the problem was that particular room, and the only room he really felt that could be used was his studio, and of course we wouldn't fit in the studio. On D3, you're awarding bids for different supplies. It's my understanding we still haven't paid for some of the bills that we had last year. Will the vendors that you're contacting actually do business with us? People like Dick Lick or your Hammets, are they going to sell us more merchandise if they haven't been paid for what was sold to us last year?
I mean, that is totally up to the vendors. You understand that. But the vendors do understand that this is a public entity and that it may not be when they want it, but they will be.
All right, but well, I don't know that I, as a vendor, would want to deal with somebody who already owed me $1,000.
thousands of dollars.
I can understand
And
that.
I also understand that there are not that many vendors that are interested in dealing with schools because, as you said, they have to many times wait until they get paid. If those bids are sent out or the supplies are ordered, do you have any idea how long before the school is actually going to receive them? Normally, you order supplies like in April, and they come in somewhere around June. Are we going to wait 2 or 3 months before these supplies come in?
I have no idea what the logistics are.
And neither do the teachers and neither do the parents.
I don't have that answer for you.
Mr. President, can I just, I know that the ed data order that we put in every year, which is a consortium bid, were sent out late, based on working very hard in July on staffing. So those orders have gone out, and some of them are starting to appear already. So we'd have to just wait for them. I appreciate the struggle, but they are out. I think, what, 2 weeks? About 2 weeks.
And normally the turnaround time is a couple months, isn't it? Or is that just because they're normally ordered in April and everybody realizes that they're not needed until September, so things just get put aside?
We were in contact with them during the summer. They were anxious to get the orders in, so they're well aware of the situation here. So I'm hoping those vendors will respond quickly.
Also, one question. Ms. Lewis talked about the nurses. I hope you realize how important it is. And you said, if there's enough money. Well, if is a big word, even though it's only 2 letters. And if there isn't enough money, it's a big risk that you're taking by having, yes, they're registered nurses, but they're not school nurses. If you do get them through Delta T group, are we guaranteed it's going to be the same nurses for the entire year, or are they going to come in, a couple of weeks and then suddenly it's a new face? If it's going to be different people every week or every couple of weeks, it's going to be difficult for the school nurse to let this person who doesn't know the school or know what's going on to take over if that nurse is going for lunch or whatever the situation would be.
Thank you, Mr. McCollum. Jeff Mattingly, please come to the podium, state your name, your address, and your group affiliation if appropriate, sir.
Jeff Mattingly, 56 Walnut. Thank you, Mr. Jacobus, for attempting, through the chair, thank you, Mr. Jacobus, for attempting to answer that question. And from the gravity that I've taken from the meetings of the finances, that my question is, have we arrived at a final number for the state loan yet? Because obviously so many prior purchases, outstanding bills are dependent upon payment, which, is kind of frightening for us when we put in a request for $180,000 worth of supplies, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people still waiting for money. Do we know if we've arrived at that number yet?
The audit is not complete yet, sir.
So then I guess we're left to hope and pray that these vendors do fill these orders and that we get these desperately needed supplies that obviously ran down to virtually zero.
Well, sir, I'm sure Mr. Jacobus could attest to this, that I'm sure if the vendors refuse to sell it to us, that we'll find other vendors that will.
You'll find vendors that will.
Go to other vendors.
Which is just my point, meaning that we have money to pay them, those that will.
Do we have money to pay them?
Yeah.
We have this year's budget to pay for this year's school supplies, yes, sir.
Okay. I see that we've rehired a domicile investigator. Is that a single investigator, or are we back to 2?
There's one on the agenda, sir.
I'm sorry?
Only one is on the agenda.
Only one at a time, one right now. Okay. Back when we met Mr. Regan, the first meeting, not the meet Mr. Regan meeting, but when we met him initially, it was established at the time that Mr. D'Elia had a lengthy presentation on athletics department finances. And if my memory serves me correctly, I think Mr. Jacobus said that there was the unusual circumstance in Belleville that had been taken by this board to transfer funds to the advisory council, and that was simply, it seemed to be an explanation for why the athletics department had no line item in the audit, and there was a line item from the auditor requesting that information, to which he received nothing. I'm asking, is this board going to change back and reverse that process and make the athletic council money or the athletic department monies now be auditable again, and audited, and be able to account for them to the public in the audit, and reverse that decision and transfer those funds?
That hasn't been discussed.
That hasn't been discussed. Could you consider it?
We can consider it.
You would? Okay. Well, I'd just like to reiterate that I think that it was, I think you said it was highly unusual, if my memory serves me correctly, that the...
Do you want me to answer, Mr. President?
Sure.
I think the question you're bringing up was the athletic department game receipts and those things. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes,
Yes.
there was nothing on the audit, and it simply seemed as though it was because it was transferred.
There was a misunderstanding between the auditor and the business office in terms of getting the information to them. That's why the auditor put a comment in there. But this year that we've started out, the game receipts are coming to the business office, and we are validating them, and they will be part of the audit.
Okay,
So
thank you.
it's changed.
I'd be happy to see that turn up in the audit. There was one other item that struck me curious with the auditor's report, and that was that there was a representation to the legal fees which were outstanding and uncalculable as a liability going into the future, but there had been no line item for the expenses paid that year. And I would have thought that it would have made perfect common sense of an auditor to at least establish an annual number for expenditure on lawsuit. Is that something that would normally, maybe through the chair again, maybe Mr. Jacobus knows, or Mr. Egan, someone with financial background, whether or not that would normally be an established part of the audit, at least an annual number for expenses paid for the year?
Mr. Jacobus?
When Mr. Bliss came and he gave a summary of the deficit and where the different over expenditures were, which answers a question somebody asked earlier, you know, when did we do that? We did that, in fact, and had the professional here. There was an over expenditure in the legal area. Since then, the budget was established in, I guess, last March. When the board struck that budget, there was an average amount. And actually, I didn't prepare that budget, but it was done with an average. It certainly wasn't at the same level as the auditor announced. So, because that was an over expenditure. We are working very diligently on cases. We are working with our insurance carrier to make sure that where we deserve representation there, that an attorney is assigned through the insurance. So we're working through that. I can't say that there won't be a budget adjustment on attorney fees, but it's an averaged amount is what we're doing over the last several years.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Pardon me?
Time is up, sir.
Can I have just one moment to respond to that, as the question and answer takes up my time as well?
5 minutes away, you want to use it as the way
Well,
you want to
I'd
use it,
simply
sir.
just like to say that I've come to understand that very often insurance payments can be part of settlements, and they can also be part of insurance settlements, which means that the public gets no real sense of what litigation costs are if you have concealed payments in the final result. But that I find very disturbing, and I'd like to find some way in the audit process of actually getting a complete picture of what litigation costs are costing the public. Mr. Evans.
So just so that we're clear, when a case is accepted by the insurance carrier, which in the case of this district is generally speaking the New Jersey School Board's insurance group, then except for the deductible which the district pays, which can go against either defense cost or indemnification, or whatever that deductible is, after that, there are no legal fees. It doesn't matter how many legal fees are expended. They're not expended by the board. They're expended by the insurance company.
And do we not pay in ratables an experience rating down the road for every dime that's settlement?
You might or you might not. It's an insurance group, so their rates are not determined quite the same way as your private insurance.
Really? So your history does not specifically play a role?
I would never say your history doesn't play a role, but a single claim is very unlikely to affect.
Well, I wish we had a single claim. Thank you.
Please come to the podium, state your name, your address, and your group affiliation to the appropriate center.
Mr. Frank D'Antoni, 129 North Prospect Street. Believe it or not, board members and administrators, I actually look for occasions where I can thank or praise governing bodies. It rarely presents itself. But tonight I want to thank you if you vote for A2, the rehiring of domicile investigator. Because in response to Mr. Madigan, you just said it's on the agenda, Mr. Rivera. I hope the board members vote yes to hire a domicile investigator. Now, I've been asking several meetings that you return shop class and auto mechanic class, and I presented and read several editorials from trade magazines of how desperate the trades are to get qualified people. About a week or two ago, August 26th, the Star Ledger in the business article had another article, headline, Secret to Money After High School, Shop Class. And it gives a story of one young man who wanted to be an auto mechanic. He took, in his school, he took it, and now, as a 19-year-old, he's earning 3 times as much as the average high school graduate. So it's a very valuable thing, and it's something that we need desperately. We need mechanics in all our trades, and we're not getting them. We're pushing these kids to college educations and showing that there's not enough jobs to fill these highly educated and highly indebted students. So please consider bringing back shop and auto mechanics so I can come and praise you again. In regards to Mr. Cronin and Mr. Matt about the classroom supplies. Here we are in the second week of school, we have no classroom supplies. Yet in the budget handout that you gave us, dated May 2nd, 2014, it shows general supplies for classrooms, $158 per pupil. That's a lot of supplies you can supply. The question is, why weren't they ordered? That was 4 months before school started. Now, I'm a contractor. Contractors don't have mechanics come on the job on Monday and say, all right, guys, we ordered the materials. They should be here in a week or two. Now, I don't understand this. Here's your document, May 2nd, showing that you approved $158 for supplies. Why weren't they ordered and delivered before September 1st?
No, thank you.
Can I get an answer to that?
Mr. Jacobs?
Again, the process was to go through staffing. We've had meetings in June, July, August, constantly evaluating the staffing, trying to put as many staff members back as we can. The order for data, like I said, is a consortium bid. We did have it. We weren't sure whether we could put the entire order in or not. We did put the entire order in. And that was just a decision to delay it rather than give a partial order and then have everybody have half of what they need. So hopefully all of that data was a result of what was requested. And if it's delayed a little bit, I apologize, but the cash flow just was not there or be able to make that decision.
Well, we all pay our taxes based on the budget increase, so the money was there. Now, at the last meeting, I started to bring up, it's only about 5 minutes rough. I brought this up back in 1998. I brought it up about a year ago. Mr. Rivera told me to squeal on people. talking about the school lunch program, to properly check the applications to see if they're legitimate. And here's an article from 1998, a North Jersey town, and the business administrator there got after it. One of the things he was quoted on, he said, I wanted someone to tell me on a case-by-case basis why a person that's maintaining a high standard of living is still eligible for free lunches. Turns out that business administrator I was there last week, I asked if he was superintendent, was our own Mr. Egan. So now you have someone in-house who can tell you how to correctly check these school lunch applications so we eliminate the fraud. Now the state controller last year, about a year and a half ago, did a big audit, and he put a big report out. You can get it online about the fraud in the school lunch program. So I'm asking you to investigate that.
Thank you, Mr. Fenton.
And finally, one more thanks. I want to thank Mr. Acosta and Mr. Jacobus. They know how to use these things, this microphone. Can you please teach some of these board members that...
Thank you very much, Mr. Fenton. Please come to the podium, state your name, your address, and your group affiliation.
Okay, Mike Mignon, 23 Westville Avenue, President of the BEA, the Belleville Education Association, proud of it. Also, Executive Committee member of the Belleville United Coalition. I want to say welcome to Mr. Grasso. It's very nice to see a new and different perspective to this board, so we greet you with open arms. Speaking of greeting with open arms and welcoming, last Wednesday my wife and I, we had our back to school night for our boys, two elementary school boys in our Caldwell district that we live in. I want to just paint a little picture for you of how that went. Once we entered the building that night, we were greeted with open arms from the principal. He shook everybody's hand, greeted everyone, actually even engaged in friendly conversation with them, as if they were friends, not just business associates. All the teachers were smiling, as if they loved where they worked. Halls were decorated, just a complete and evident air of pride in the school. We proceeded down to the auditorium where they gave their introduction. The principal, again, with warmth in his heart, addressed the staff as if they were a school family. Not as if they were just working for them, but as if they were a family. After he announced all the teachers, who again stood up and waved, and it was evident, you can see that these teachers absolutely loved what they did and loved where they worked, which is more important. They proceeded up to their rooms and we had a little time to spare, so we took a walk around the building. We walked into the art room. Okay, big room, big art room. It was already evident that the students were working on different art pieces and they were displayed. The enthusiasm of the art teacher, unbelievable. We then walked upstairs and said, let's check out the library. Okay, library again, fully decorated with animals. Wild about reading was the theme. Again, librarian just greeting you, asking you to come to things. Just a real warm neighborhood feeling about being in that school. We went to to our individual teachers' presentation. Again, rooms stacked with supplies, updated technology, just what you would envision an adequate and efficient school district to be. Really, really pleasant experience. But something became very, very clear to me at that time. And that clear thing that was evident to me was effective leadership. The principal created a stress-free environment. The principal respected his teachers. The principal promoted teamwork. And the principal set the stage for a school family. Notice I never mentioned anything about the Board of Education, because the Board of Education is not supposed to be involved with the day-to-day functions of the schools. The Board of Education should make the policies that enhance education and provide a healthy work environment that is vital for learning. The administration enforces these good policies, creates a cohesive work environment, and also encourages teamwork among the staff. The teachers carry out the policies, develop healthy relationships with their students, and motivate learning. All three components of the school system have to work in conjunction and in harmony with each other. For instance, after speaking to the principal over the summer, I asked him how he was able to foster such a friendly partnership with the staff. He informed me of his hiring process. Working in Belleville, I was surprised to even hear that principals actually hire their own teachers. He went through his two-part hiring process, and this is where it gets interesting. Part one is strictly a personality match, because this principal says, our personalities have to match. I have to be able to engage in conversation, friendly conversation with that teacher, and they have to also with me. So that's the first stage.
30 seconds.
Excuse me?
30 seconds left.
Sorry, I just started. If you don't mind, if you let me finish what I'm saying, that would be great. Because I really want to get to the essence of this, which would be nice.
20 seconds.
Okay? I'm kindly asking you if you just let me finish this, because it's actually really motivating.
We waited for you.
So, these past couple weeks, and this is where I want to compliment, we have been getting unique feedback from our membership about our welcome meeting this year. Some comments about the positive tone, others spoke on the fact that the goals and parameters were set. The general consensus was an uplifting theme. Our acting superintendent, Mr. Acosta, the curriculum director, initiated the first stage of this functional school system in what they phrased all in. And this is what the gist of this is about. This all-in movement means that the administration will be all in this year in working with the teachers to create a healthy work environment that fosters student learning. No more retaliation, no more favoritism, no more negativity, no more picking sides. After all, there's only one side, and that side is the students. This all-in attitude is nothing new for the teachers. We have been preaching this since last October. I'd like to call my executive committee up here, if you don't mind, real quick.
Mr. Mignone, your time is up.
I have chips for you, sir.
It's my meeting, this is our meeting, this is our business
I
meeting.
have,
You have 5 minutes, it says so in the policy. It says 5 minutes.
Other people.
Come on, Mr. Rivera.
No one else is receiving.
Listen.
What is this, sir?
I'm just asking for one more paragraph. Ready or not?
One more paragraph.
That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. All right. But in good faith, that this administration wants to create a first step toward ensuring a better Belleville, our executive committee once again state that we are all in. The question is, Belleville Board of Education, are you? If so, we invite you to take a chip and place it in a jar for all the community to witness.
Thank you, Mr.
If you don't mind,
Mignone.
can I have one of our members
Thank you,
approach
Mr.
the
Mignone.
board?
Your time is up. Georgia Polite, please come to the podium. State your name, your address, and your group affiliation.
You're so
Stevens Street. I'd like to thank the board for allowing me to make the announcement concerning the uniforms and the Facebook page with the uniform exchange program. We've given out over 200 uniforms, and many students have been able to benefit from it. Thank you. As a parent, and from a parent's perspective, the first 2 days of school were non-productive. Nothing was produced. My son went to school and sat in an auditorium, as did many other students, in classrooms doing absolutely nothing. What was being decorated, Mr. Mignon, was the decador. That was what was produced the first 2 days. It's unfortunate that we do have these issues and we do have these problems in terms of the IT issues, and I'm not sure who's on the IT committee when Clarity and the contract for Clarity was established. There's no money that's missing. They were given a loan. They were paid. We now have to pay interest on that loan, and that's where our money is gone. In terms of the reduction in medical staff, it's frightening. I fear for the teachers and students that are at risk or have a medical issue. I'm wondering, are we in compliance? Are there any minimal guidelines or coverage that we need to have as a school district in terms of nurses being on staff? Are there any guidelines?
Mr. Acosta, do you know what the guidelines are as far as nursing is concerned? Oh. Ms. Polite asked if there are state guidelines as to what nursing staff we need to provide, and I'm sure there is. Offhand, you don't know?
I'm not completely familiar with it, but I will absolutely look it up.
I have another suggestion in terms of saving money. On the agenda for this evening, there's a stipend to have these meetings televised at $36 an hour for the advisor and $10, I believe, for each of the students. Instead, why not let the mass communications class rotate, giving each student an opportunity to gain experience by helping the advisor or under the direction of the advisor to take the meetings. Non-paid, give them credit. We need more hands-on, as Mr. Frantantoni pointed out, more vocational training. Just an idea. Especially since our meetings are so very long. Several months ago, I had spoke concerning the New Jersey school's performance and how our school, our Belleville School District, specifically the high school, is lagging in comparison both to its peer schools as well as statewide. Academic achievement for our peer percentile, which means compared to the schools that are just like us, such as Kearney, for instance, is a neighboring school, we're at the 34% percentile. On the state level, we're at the 28th percentile. But yet, our percentage of targets met is 97%. It just doesn't add up. For our college and career readiness, our peer percentile is 31%. Our statewide percentile is 30%. And the percentage of targets met, 0. Graduation and post-secondary. Our peer percentile is 60%. Our statewide percentile is 48%. And 100% of our targets are being met. How are we establishing meeting our targets, yet our percentiles are they're failing? This is available on the Department of Education website, and I have copies for whoever wants them. In terms of the domicile investigator, based upon those statistics, we really don't need a domicile investigator. Who would want to come to school in Belleville? Is the domicile investigator, Bruce Morgan, the same domicile investigator that we had previously that was fired?
His was not fired, the position was eliminated.
So then who is Ms. Rodriguez?
I'm sorry?
Who is Ms. Rodriguez?
It's a personnel issue, I don't want to address that.
Okay, well, she was a domicile investigator that the litigation, what we settled for $80,000 and made a settlement. Was that, I mean, it's public information, was that not her title?
I just told you we won't discuss personnel issues. Thank you, Ms. Blaine.
In terms of the legal matters, and one of the reasons perhaps why we cannot get the funding is because the number is floating, it's rolling. $70,000 was paid in litigation against Mike Mignon, $80,000 for Ms. Rodriguez. Although litigation is a necessary reality in society, it appears that Belleville has had more than its fair share of legal issues. And even more troubling is the fact that there are yet more to come. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Earlier, Mr. Grasso, when you took your oath, you said you would fairly, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of your office. I know that you will. I know you. I had you as a teacher, and I commend you. I wish you luck and great endeavors, I'm sure, will come from you from that position. I challenge all of you to go back and analyze whether or not you've been fairly, impartially, and justly performing your duties. We have, for instance, last year I was looking at the scheduling, and we had 1 criminal justice class last year. This year we have 6. Now, has the interest in criminal justice increased that drastically? Yet while our art and visual arts have diminished, this same report right here, the same one that I discussed, that was on the Star Ledger inside New Jersey, best high schools, where Belleville did not even place in Essex County, and it was based upon SAT scores and the New Jersey Ask. Go to page 7 of this report, where it analyzes the art programs. It says NR, because no data was received. They didn't even give the information. And I would suggest that the numbers that were sent in, they just don't add up.
Thank you, Mrs. Blaine.
Anthony Sabella, 40 Crescent Terrace. I was going to be short and sweet tonight, but other things came up. We spoke about the security guards that are armed in our schools. I think that's a terrible idea. Why we're the only town in Essex County with armed guards is besides that. But Mr. Jacobus in the last meeting spoke of an $80,000 or $100,000 savings that we were able to find with the security. Am I mistaken, or? Okay, how do we come across that savings?
The supervisor of security was, the position was not filled.
It was eliminated?
Well, it wasn't filled.
Okay, so we were able to do it without a supervisor?
At this time, yes.
Okay. See, what sounds stupid to me is, I'm Mr. Smith and I knock on the door, I ring the bell, and that police officer lets me in, and he's carrying his weapon. He doesn't know if I'm carrying a weapon. So as he walks me to the principal's office, I shoot him in the back of the head. Now I have 2 guns to shoot everybody else with. Without a metal detector, it's ridiculous to have an armed guard. It is a waste of money. And the only reason this came about is because this board jumped on the
the Sandy Hook thing and figured out we got a job for Mr. Escott, one of our buddies. And that's how this all came about. Now we know that we don't need Mr. Escott, and we don't need these armed guards in our schools. It's ridiculous. Waste of money. Get rid of nurses, but let's get a gun in the school. Next thing, Mr. Della Fara spoke to Mr. Jacobus at the last meeting, and he was told that a committee decided on who was coming back and who was not. Mr. Jacobus could not tell him who was a member of that committee at that time, but he told him he would at this meeting. I'm asking Mr. Egan, I'm sorry, who is the members of that committee that made the decision on who was being rehired?
There were a number of people involved in the committee. Just give me a moment, I'll think of the names. Marilyn Hawthorne, who was retired.
Just the names would be great.
I'm sorry?
Just the names would be great.
Well, I just want to make sure everybody knows who.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, she's a retired principal, elementary principal. The head of curriculum, the head of special ed. I'm trying to think if there was a fourth one. There was a fourth person, I just can't remember that position. And then, in addition to that, on the elementary level, interviews were conducted by the, I believe, the principals of the elementary schools. And all their recommendations then filtered up to the top, to the level of the superintendent. I was not involved in the process.
You were not involved in the process?
No.
Okay, on one good note, I would like to thank the Board of Education workers for the great job they did in replacing my uncle's monument. I'm very happy the pipe broke. It looks better now than it ever looked before. Good night.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Moving on to resolutions, may I have a motion on A personnel? So moved. Second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President, I would like to request that we call A separately, please. I am requesting that we call A3 separately, please.
Is there any further discussion? A, separate vote on A3, Mr. Jacobus. A3. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Jacobus, please call A3 separately.
Thank you. 1 second. Thank you. I'm sorry for the interruption. Mr. Grasso.
No part.
We're voting on A3. Mr. Grasso?
No part in it.
No part. I'll take no part.
Thank you. Mr. Kugler?
Yes.
Mrs. Torres?
Abstain.
Mr. Frieda?
Yes.
Mrs. Lombardi?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes. Mr. Jacobus, please poll the board on the balance of A.
A1 through 15. Mr. Grasso?
Yes.
Mr. Kugler?
Yes.
Mrs. Torres?
Yes.
Mr. Frieda?
Yes.
Mrs. Lombardi?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes. There is no curriculum instruction. We have a motion on C, board action, board policy.
So moved.
Yes.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Jacobus?
Mr. Grasso?
Yes.
Mr. Kubler?
Yes.
Mrs. Torres?
Yes.
Mr. Frieda?
Yes.
Mrs. Lombardi?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes. Can I have a motion on deed purchasing and business services?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? Mr. Jacobus?
Mr. Grasso?
No partners.
No part. Thank you. Mr. Kubler?
Yes.
Mrs. Torres?
Yes.
Mr. Frieda?
Yes.
Mrs. Lombardi?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes. Can I have a motion on e-finance?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Jacobus?
Mr. Grasso?
Yes.
Mr. Kubler?
Yes.
Mrs. Torres?
Yes.
Mr. Frieda?
Yes.
Mrs. Lombardi?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed?